Welcome, everybody. Today we're here with the EU4Algae platform. And as part of the platform, we have a series of webinars. And for this specific webinar, we want to talk about an upcoming task that we have as part of the platform, which is the drafting of a roadmap for the EU algae industry. So we have an agenda for the day. So as you can see, we're starting just with like a quick welcome and introduction. And then the first part of the webinar will be made by some short presentations. Firstly, Angela Schultzeden from Sustainable Project and the Submariner Network will provide an overview of what we're talking about when we talk about the EU algae industry, what are its size today and what are kind of like future scenarios for it. Then we have a presentation from Marcela Fernandez de Souza from the University of Ghent, who actually will provide some insights from a study that she has worked on in recent months on how we can support the development of the sustainable EU algae industry with a case study on fertilizers. And then we will have a presentation from a European project, which will kind of tell us about how projects like i3 Seaweed can support and ensure companies that are entering the macroalgae sector to be ready to scale and have strong demonstration and enter the market with ready products. And then in the second half of the session, we will have an interactive activity where we actually want to collect input from you on what you think that should be envisioned for the future of the EU algae industry, thinking ahead of what we would like to see in 2045, but also most importantly, think of actions of how we can get there. And in the second part, towards the end, we will also try to see if we can come up with a prioritization of some of the actions that can really lead us to this vision. And then we will really try to close by 12 so that we don't keep you waiting for too long. And we will have a summary of kind of like the key points of discussion. So without further ado, I see that some people are still joining, but I would actually welcome our first speaker. Actually, no, before that, I still wanted to give you a quick intro on what is EU4Algae. If it's the first time that you're joining the webinar, it's the first time that you're hearing about this platform. So the platform was really kind of put together to support the growth and innovation of the EU algae industry across different sectors and to really facilitate the collaboration, knowledge exchange, and the development of the industry as we speak. So this is really to kind of promote the economic potential, recognizing the economic potential that this sector has also for the future, in alignment with a lot of initiatives that right now are also being prioritized at the EU level to support the green transition, the EU Green Deal, but also the farm to fork strategy. And all of this, so the project also collects a lot of resources and tools that can be useful to a variety of stakeholders. So not just those working in companies, but also researchers, as well as, of course, policymakers that are interested in the sector and can, help us to create a sustainable algae industry sector. And now I would welcome the first speaker, who is Angela Schultzeden. She's the founder and managing director of ESPRO, Sustainable Projects, based in Berlin, as well as the founder and managing director of the Submariner Network for Blue Growth.
Yes, hello, Silvia, and hello to everybody for this morning and for this session, and thanks for giving me the word. Indeed, I have a double head here. ESPRO is part of the EU4Algae consortium, but with our Submariner network, we are also highly involved in promoting algae cultivations as well as product development throughout Europe. And we are also coordinating the mission Ocean and Waters in the Baltic and the North Sea, which also has as its sub-objective to turn the blue economy carbon neutral and more circular, and has a big element in terms of promoting also the algae industry in Europe. Next slide. So basically what we want to sort of develop together with you and actually also at first explained to you is that one of the tasks we have been given under EU4Algae is to develop the EU algae industry roadmap, and basically to therefore showcase the steps which are necessary in the coming years to actually achieve a thriving EU4Algae industry. This roadmap is not a single standing roadmap. We are aware that quite a number of European countries, but also projects, regional initiatives have already developed roadmaps or are about to develop roadmaps. So we are obviously integrating the findings of these more regional based roadmaps into the overarching European industry roadmap, and which is then also targeting actors both at member state level, European level, of course, but then also the industry itself, in terms of seeing collaborative actions in order to accelerate the development of the industry in Europe leading towards the path we actually want to see. And therefore, our starting point is not only to think about actions, but to actually first understand where are we today and what could be scenarios in 2035, in 10 years time, but also in 20 years time, to very concretely think where could the industry stand in Europe if we sort of take the right steps as of today. And that is what I want to present now, to give you first a picture of what is the state of play of this rather nascent industry we are all aware of today, but where could it also develop in 20 years' time. I myself have seen sort of the algae industry really growing. We started off 15 years ago where it was still very much a research concept, a lab concept, and now we actually really see more and more companies coming into the game, and where it's really sort of picking up in Europe. So next slide. So before we are sort of talking about scenarios and an EU4Algae industry roadmap, I think it is very important to understand what is an EU-algae industry. What does it encompass? And here you can see the various value chains. So obviously we are talking about algae cultivation and harvesting in Europe, which is encompassing both macroalgae as well as microalgae, and also important to note spirulina. So in the EU4Algae, we are really sort of talking about all algae sectors, the macro and the micro one. So this is not a seaweed initiative. And then we are sort of, of course, going into the processing stage. And you see here sort of the various steps which are necessary. And obviously the industry is then also encompassing services, activities, the technology which we require in order to produce as well as process the algae, and other services, technical services, consultancy services. So that is what is normally, when we talk about market figures, seen as the algae industry. But what is normally then always of interest for anybody you are talking with when we talk about algae are, of course, the product applications where algae are used. And you can see it here for yourself. I'm sure you know it also, that there are really various applications, that it's not only about human food, but it's also about feed, food supplements, nutraceuticals, biostimulants, fertilizers, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, bioremediation, but also very important to note that it is a new biomass. So we are talking about biomaterial, biofuels, bioactive compounds. So really a very huge area of applications. Next slide. And when we are talking about European algae industry and to actually develop a roadmap on how to develop this industry, I think it is very important to distinguish what is really the European element here. Are we actually, when we are talking about product applications and the companies based in Europe, is it really so that initially it is important that they are using algae cultivated in Europe? We all know that we have a thriving industry already in Europe using algae, but that for the time being, quite a number of them are actually making use of algae imported mainly, for instance, from Asia. And we think that this industry is also highly important, as it's also providing jobs and turnover in Europe. With the idea then, that could be the idea that the algae they are using for now, which are imported, will be replaced in future by algae cultivated in Europe. Or are we talking actually mainly about European consumers? So that whatever is produced by the industry is then actually also picked up by European consumers. And here also, as a starting point, it may be important to get the figures of those European consumers who are already sort of fans of algae products or products which have algae as an element. From companies which may actually not even be based in Europe yet. So I think this is very important to note, that we always know what we are talking about. And when I now show further figures of where we are standing, it is important to note that we are actually having figures mainly of the upper level. So the companies which are producing algae in Europe, and they are then processing the algae in Europe, and the service providers, but the figures are not showing the companies which are using algae in their product applications. Why is that so? That actually from an economic point of view, a statistical point of view, it's quite difficult to sort of distinguish them and take them out of this calculation. But if we had these figures, and that may also be sort of a discussion which is ongoing in EU4Algae on how we can sort of get better figures, which are then also convincing, of course, our member states that this is an important industry to come, which is replacing other bioresources, and is therefore also having an environmental beneficial element, because algae have the characteristic that they can sort of replace existing products made out of other biomass, terrestrial biomass, or even plastics, etc., by replacing it with algae elements, and therefore actually also making an important contribution to the Green Deal in Europe. So next slide. So when we are talking about really now, therefore, biomass production in Europe, you can see here for yourself that it's really nascent in Europe, and that, however, the industry itself, when it comes to global figures, is not a nascent industry. It's basically, when we are talking about fostering an EU algae industry, we are really saying, okay, how can we sort of, have an element, how can we increase this big industry already existing in throughout the globe? How can we increase the European share in our territory? So in terms of macroalgae, you can see that with the European share is really only 0.8%, and with microalgae it's even less. And what is also interesting to note when it comes to macroalgae, that here in Europe we are still mainly talking about figures which are sort of arriving from wild harvesting and not so much cultivation, whereas in Asia we have the reverse order, where algae are really sort of cultivated, or seaweed are cultivated and not harvested. And you see here also the enormous growth actually of the industry in Asia. Next figure. Yeah, and what does it mean in detail? Here we have taken the database from JRC with figures from 2022. And to break it down concretely, we have already some 550 enterprises in the EU member states, as well as then including Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, and UK as important bases also for the algae industry. And what is interesting to note is that here again we are showing the producers, so we are on the upper level of the value chain, and that many of those who are actually in the cultivation business are at the same time, for the time being, also processing the algae they are producing. And actually we have more companies in the field of microalgae or spirulina, so the land-based companies, as the macroalgae companies, which are then more offshore in the waters. Yeah, but still sort of relatively equally distributed. France is currently sort of the leader here, but actually also in Spain, Ireland, Norway, Italy, we do have quite a number of enterprises based. Next slide. And this is basically showing almost the same, but in a different way. This is now with the focus on macroalgae only and the seaweed cultivation. And what is interesting here to see that this is still sort of a very quite small scale industry in terms of small scale farms, and that we are only now recently seeing sort of that there are really bigger cultivations coming through. And here it's actually also, when it comes to macroalgae, we really see sort of strong development. And I have also been personally involved in studies where, for instance, the space within offshore wind parks to come, which are really developing at fast pace throughout Northern Europe, with figures really, quadrupling, quintupling, so where there are huge offshore wind parks to come, and where there are quite strong developments to use the space quite offshore also for low trophic aquaculture, and especially also macroalgae cultivation. So we see sort of a development where more space is made available for these large-scale cultivations, and where there is also still a huge development to be done in terms of the technology development and the appropriate ships, etc., to be developed in order to really sort of increase this potential of macroalgae cultivation in Europe. Next slide. Yeah, and it is, however, we have to really sort of face this, that it is a nascent industry, but please always keep in mind that we are talking about the upper level of the first slide I've shown to you. So we are not talking a bit the big IKEAs or L'Oreals or whatever, those who are really using algae in their products. But we have to be aware that currently, when it comes to employment, we are talking about some 2,500, or rather actually the double figure, because this one here was a survey undertaken only with 242 out of the 448 enterprises which have been identified to be already active in the algae industry. So if you see here that we have employment of 2,200 together, this figure automatically has to be doubled. So we currently have an employment of some 4,500 people in that industry, and that this is mainly based in production and processing and services, which is not really surprising. This figure may not sound so impressive. We now sort of didn't show the figures, however, in terms of development, so that really there has been a huge development and increase in terms of employment over the past 10 years. And this is sort of the exercise we want to do with you. Where could it be if we sort of now extrapolate this in 20 years' time? Will we have, from the 4,500 today, will we end up in an industry where we are talking potentially perhaps of 45,000 people being employed? And that is then actually already quite a substantial figure. Also, relatively speak, I would like to stress that even though these figures may not sound so impressive, we should also be aware that, for instance, when we talk about the macroalgae industry, that when we talk about the European fisheries sector, that here employment figures are also not really in the millions or in the 100,000. So we are also here having figures by now that those who are really in fisheries are sort of more in the range of 10,000 people. Next slide. Yeah, and what is interesting to note when we talk about applications and the industry itself, that one also has to consider the development from low to high value products. So you can read it here for yourself, that obviously that the value by kilogram of seaweed, for instance, when it is sort of just harvested seaweed, but then moving up to really cultivated algae, is sort of increasing dramatically, and that this is then also having an influence on the product value of the algae products and therefore the related markets. So obviously the cosmetic, nutraceutical, pharmaceutical markets, these are much, much higher value products than sort of, just using algae as biomass, be it in food additives, etc. But that is not to say that, for instance, the market field for using algae as biomaterial is not sort of an interesting one. It is only that currently quite a number of companies are focusing on the high value products, given the fact that it's a nascent industry, and therefore still production costs are quite high, and therefore you have to go into this high value field. Next slide. And this is, I think, almost also already my last one. So let's take a look again into the macroalgae. What are sort of the current shares of applications and what could be potential future markets when we talk about macroalgae? And here you actually see quite a interesting distinction, that if we talk about current market shares, it's really in the food and the additives sector, and less companies working on feed or biostimulants, or, as I mentioned, as the future market, the biopackaging. But if you then look at the right side, you see on the slide where, however, I have to stress that food and feed had been exempted, but therefore, to look into sort of the innovative market applications and their potential shares, you see that, biostimulants, pet foods, nutraceuticals, so those products which are really in this very high value market are also sort of placed here in the short term, but also in terms of the market share, pretty high up. And when we talk about sort of biomaterial, that this is sort of more seen in the medium and longer term. But I also have to stress here that the longer term is what it's actually meant here is 2030, which we in our exercise in a few minutes to come with all of you is for us actually the short-term vision, because we are talking about in 2030 that this is in 5 years' time, and this is of course a very short development. And that is interesting actually also to see that there are not that many scenarios out there, and that is why we also want to work with you in terms of what this whole thing could mean in 10 or 20 years time. And that's really sort of the time frame we should actually look at. And I think now I sort of show the last slide, which is almost pretty much the same, but only sort of expressed in a different way. That you can see here that in terms of the demand for macroalgae products as foreseen in 2030, so in 5 years' time, that this is still very much in the food and the feed sector, and less in sort of the, even the biomaterial, etc., is not even put up here, or the pharmaceutical market. But that is also something to be explored, whether this is changing in 2040. And with that, I hope I have given you a good introduction to what we are talking about, and what the scenarios could be, and what we actually want to promote with this roadmap in the coming 10 or 20 years' time, and give my word back to Sylvia. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Angela. I think that indeed we got a really good overview of the overall sector now. So now it actually is interesting to look into possibly a specific product output. And for this, I give the word to Marcela Fernandez de Souza, who is a researcher and project manager at Ghent University and was recently involved in the EU industry algae study. So welcome to Marcela.
Thank you, Sylvia. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here to discuss a little bit of what we discovered in our study. So as Sylvia already said, we will be focusing on algae-based fertilizing products. I hope these are the correct slides because I see the different title, but okay. Let's move forward. So as Sylvia already mentioned, this was developed within a study to support a sustainable algae industry. This was a tender from Sine and Digimare to support the EU Algae Initiative. And as you can see in the slide, Ghent University was just one of the partners in the consortium. And we were also only looking at this specific application on fertilizing products, but there were plenty of other studies being developed within this one, more on the food, feed, bio ecosystem services application. So there will be quite some reports coming soon. They are now being revised and soon will be published. And these are also very interesting to check in the future. So yeah, we can move. So I would like to start with explaining a little bit the regulation on how to include algae products as fertilizing products. So in a EU level, we have the fertilizing product regulation, which specifies how you can implement a fertilizing product in the EU market with CE mark. But it's very important to highlight that if you want to put a product in the national market, you don't have to follow this regulation. So then you can follow your own national regulations, and these sometimes will be stricter or more relaxed than this one. But of course, when we are talking about the EU algae industry, it's interesting to see how to include these products in a EU market. So that's why the study focused on the fertilizing product regulation. So you can move. The fertilizing product regulation, they separate they analyze two types of inputs for the fertilizer. So first we have to see if a certain material can be a component in a fertilizing product. And then we also have what kind of fertilizing products are accepted. So first we have to see, can algae be a component in a fertilizing product? And I'm happy to say, yes, it's already included in the fertilizing product regulation. So it's under the component material category 2, which is called plants, plant parts, or plant extracts. Even though algae are not plants, it does include algae. It's really specified there in the text that we should interpret CMC2 as also including algae, both macro and microalgae, but it excludes cyanobacteria. So because of concerns about some toxins excreted by some cyanobacteria, they do completely remove them from this component material category. So this is for algae that are not too much processed. So you can do some of the basic processes like drying, water extracting, but anything else goes into another component material category. So Sylvia, if you can click. Yeah, I put some examples here. For instance, if you do a chemical extraction, you go under CMC1 and then you have to comply with REACH. If you do anaerobic digestion, then you would go under CMC5. If you do, for instance, pyrolysis or gasification, you go CMC13. And each of these component material categories will have some specific legal requirements for them to be approved as an input for a fertilizing product. So we can go now to the types of fertilizers. So once we already know algae can be included as a component in a fertilizing product. But if we use the full algae as a fertilizing product, what kind of functions can they have within the fertilizing product regulation? So they can be a solid organic fertilizer, they can be a liquid organic fertilizer, an organic soil improver, or a non-microbial plant biostimulant. So this is just from the definitions, but then we looked closer to really see if they could indeed meet the requirements for each of these categories. So we can go further. For solid organic fertilizer, you can see that the legal requirements are you have to have 2.5% of nitrogen, 2% of phosphorus, 2% of potassium, or you can have a mix of them all with at least 4% total of the sum of these elements and at least 1% of each of the elements. So it's very strict what can be categorized as a nitrogen fertilizer or a phosphorus fertilizer or a potassium fertilizer or a mixed. And then we looked into the general composition of macroalgae and microalgae, and you can see that in general, they can be solid organic fertilizers. Only macroalgae for it to be a phosphorus fertilizer is very tricky because usually their phosphorus content is very low. But overall, they can be as long as they are dried because, yeah, as probably you all know, algae have a lot of water in their composition, which means that their nutrient content is very low when they are in their normal state. So you would have to dry it to reach these percentages that are required by the fertilizing product regulation. So next one. For the liquid organic fertilizer, it's trickier. Yeah, you can already click, Sylvia, because they would have a higher water content. Of course, they would be liquid. Then it's much, much more difficult to reach these legal requirements for nutrient content. So there are some possibilities. A microalgae in a higher nitrogen content range could be a possibility. Maybe a mix of NPK could also be possible for both. But again, we will need to dry them to improve their dry matter content while still remaining in the liquid state. So there is a little bit trickier to reach these legal requirements. Next one. For organic soil improver, both are fine. You just need to have 7.5% of organic carbon in your composition. So that's okay. Both algae have a lot of organic carbon. So this requirement should be fairly easy to reach. However, the product does have to have a dry matter of over 20%. So again, drying is required. So you see there's always this energy input, which will make everything more costly and a little bit less environmentally sustainable. For non-microbial plant biostimulant, they're both fine as long as you can prove biostimulant activity, which is a bit obvious. But we do have quite some products already in the market. Angela in her presentation also highlighted biostimulant as a very promising product. And we do have quite some extracts already showing proven biostimulant activity. So that's a very interesting category to use the algae. Okay. So now that we know that from a legal perspective, following the fertilizing product regulation, the several algae products could be marked as a European fertilizer, so or fertilizing product, so either fertilizer or biostimulants. But how do they actually perform? Are algae products promising fertilizing products? So we also did a review on that. And for the fertilizer, you can click. There are quite some positive aspects to it. So it has been proven that algae, especially microalgae, are slow release fertilizers. And there's also some indication that they would reduce nutrient leaching, also because of this low release characteristic. But there are also some downsides for the fertilizer applications. So there are some studies indicating some increased emissions. This is a bit expected because of the high carbon content. You do have some increased activity in the soil, which can be positive and negative. But yeah, these studies measured emissions and they saw an increase compared to the mineral fertilizers. They are very costly. I think overall that's a concern for current algae products in the market. So if you compare with mineral fertilizers, we're not even near able to compete with them. And they also have low production volumes in EU to date. So if you saw the previous presentation, we see that we are only producing very little, 0.69, 0.5, no, 0. I think was 9% of the global production. So just to give an idea of how far we are from replacing mineral fertilizers, in the EU annually, we import 9 million or produce 9 million tons of nitrogen fertilizers. And as you saw in the previous presentation, in the EU, we're not even close to producing thousands of tons of algae. So there is a huge mismatch between how much we are actually producing and how much we would need to produce to even scratch the surface of the fertilizer market with algae products. However, for biostimulants, it's a whole different story. So there are quite some studies and there are products in the market that show improved fruit quality, improved plant growth, nutrient use, and stress tolerance. So they can really be helpful in this transition to a more sustainable agriculture. And they have a high market value. You saw in the previous presentation, the biostimulants are really high there with a possibility of short-term implementation, high market output, and really giving good revenue for the company. So biostimulants really seem like the way to go for now to implement algae as fertilizing products. So that was my message. I hope it was clear. And yeah, if anybody has questions, you can put it in the chat and I'll address them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcela, for this case study. Now we want to hear also more from the macroalgae side as well. And we have Oriane Georges from F6S, who actually will introduce to us the I3 for Seaweed project and what European projects are also doing to support more on the market readiness side of things. So I would welcome Oriane to take the floor.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Oriane, working from F6S. And today I would like to present you the project I3 for Seaweed, which is an EU-funded project focusing on microalgae development in Europe. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the I3 for Seaweed is a 3 years project, and really the goal of it is really to invest in the seaweed innovation across European market. And it's aiming to develop the value chain for the seaweed, so promoting the progress of the coastal and the maritime area of different regions of the EU. We also aim to have like new seaweed cultivation technique and biotechnological application. So we focus mostly on 3 sectors, mostly the food, the biofertilizer, and cosmetic, but open as well to extend. So the project started last September, so September 2024, and it's a 3 years project. So it will run until August 2027. It has a budget of 9 million, and within those 9 million, 1.8 million will be dedicated to support for funding to third parties. Yes, can you have the next slide, please? Okay, thank you. So it's a very extensive consortium. So the project have 16 partners around Europe. So mostly, so we are located in 6 different countries, in Spain, Belgium, Ireland, the Netherlands, and then Portugal and Germany. The project is coordinated by F6S, and we also have a lot of partners from different sectors. So we have, for example, some university working together, so representing the research area. We have some more industrial partner, like big industry, like pigment seafood. We have also a producer of seaweeds, and then and universities. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the goal of the project, as I already mentioned a little bit, is really to develop the value chain for the seaweed, promoting the progress of the coastal and maritime area of different regions in the EU. We aim to have new seaweed cultivation technique and biotechnological application. We aim to develop new products and innovative application. This is also why we have this approach of university working with food industry partner. And we want to have a sustainable regional growth, reducing the environmental impact, and increase the job market to coastal area in different European region. Within our partner, the focus is really on the food industry, the biofertilizer industry, and then the cosmetic industry. And within the food industry, we're developing products such as frozen, dried, and meat products. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So this was a really short introduction of the project. But now I would really like to focus on how this project focus also as helping SME to achieve the market readiness. Okay, so within those 3 years, we have our own investment case in our project, working with our partner, but we also have a big part of the project that will be dedicated to funding new SMEs. So we have 1.8 million dedicated to this, and we aim to fund 30 different projects across Europe, and to give each project a budget of 60,000 euro to develop innovative solution within the microalgae production, but also in the microalgae biotechnology and downstream application. So for that, we will launch an open call around August, end of August, beginning of September, that will stay open for 2 months. And we will welcome application within 2 strands, so the strands of microalgae production or the strands of microalgae biotechnology and the downstream application. Next slide, please. The goal of this open call is really to fill up some gaps within the value chain of the seaweed production, and also to support our own internal investment case from the partner. So we have, for example, the Irish Seaweed Consultancy that is working in Ireland on Naturally Innovation Centers. In Portugal, we have AIDES, our partner that is working on digital twinning for offshore aquaculture. The seaweed company in the Netherlands that is working on seaweed-based meat products, as well with ReviFood in Belgium. And we have in Spain development from Ficostera of biofertilizer and biostimulant. In Portugal, we have the development from Algae Plus of seaweed-based cosmetic, and we also have from Vivas and Pigment Seafood in Belgium the development of frozen and dry seaweed market entry. So we're really looking for applicants that are more on those investment case, but we will not limit it all the application from this. So can I have the next slide, please? If you are an SME and you are in this sector, so what we would really like, so it's so this is a requirement from the EU. The main condition to be able to be eligible for this call will be a TRL 6 minimum of the SME. And those are the topics we are looking for. This is still preliminary topic, liable to adjustment because they are still being reviewed by the project officer. We have different topics that we will be looking for. So in the microalgae production, we will be more looking for projects that are doing algae cultivation, application, and process optimization, selection of seaweed microalgae species. Sorry. We will do a more like project as well that are looking at the molecular characterization of the seaweed. Production system development. We are also looking for post-harvest processing and quality control, new innovation within the hatchery and the seeding production, and sustainability and biodiversity, as well as digital monitoring tools or site selection tools. So this will be in the strand of the microalgae production. And so those are more the topic we are looking for. And as I mentioned before, if possible, even linked to our investment case, so more on the topic of food, cosmetic, and biofertilizer. And on the other strand, we are also looking at all the microalgae biotechnology and the downstream application. And the topic we will be looking for are more like support to analyze the biochemical properties of the algae biomass and the ingredient fractions. Also the biorefinery platform service to fractional the algae biomass into different streams and processing of extract for biomass valorization. We are also looking for the scaling up of the seaweed production processes and the development of food, feed, cosmetic aggregate to a new product with seaweed as the full biomass. And the last one, application and improvement of procedure for the use of the seaweed in the industry. Again, so those are all the topics. It's not limited and can be a little bit modified in the upcoming months. Next slide, please. Yes, so what do we get if you apply? So the process is we open the call end of August, beginning of December. It's open for 2 months. You have 2 months to apply, develop your project. And it's really a bottom-up approach from your side. So we give you 60,000 and you develop your project within those 60,000 with your with the topic within the topic that I just mentioned. And you will have those 60,000 to really implement your project. So that's more one part of it. And from this, you will have, of course, the support of our investment case and seaweed partner to provide you with insights as well. And so you have the implementation phase, and then there will be also in parallel, running in parallel, a capacity building program for you, where we will run a series of investment and series of workshops. You will have access to a mentor network that is more outside of our consortium, which can be, for example, the mentor of Blue Biomatch, and valuable expertise and guidance. So for the capacity building program, we will more have like an inner support mechanism that will provide you with workshop and also like IC4 seaweed project partner companies to give them the insight from their business case, and then Q&A session, of course. And then the outer support mechanism, which consists, as I mentioned, to access like of Blue Biomatch mentor network, for example, that will bring you valuable expertise. And then we aim to have like the workshop to support you within different topics, such as your technology, but also supporting you how to frame the branding and the networking for your company, how to support you on the market, and support you how to find also new funding and investment strategy for your growth. So this is how we aim to support the SME, focusing on the macroalgae sectors. As I mentioned, I cannot share yet all the information, but it will be really soon. We are preparing all the documents at the moment. Yes, there will be the open call opening around end of August. I invite you really, if you are a potential applicant or if you're interested in our project, to follow us on LinkedIn. This is where we share the most information, and we will have for sure open call campaign, and also to sign up for our newsletter, because for sure when the call is opening, we will release a newsletter to inform you and make sure that you don't miss the call. Just after my presentation, I will pass the link in the chat, then you can follow. And also you can stay updated also on the Blue Biomatch application. So that's all for me, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Oriane. Okay, so we're running a little bit behind, but just by 3 minutes. So I think it's good, especially because we had a lot of really interesting insights and presentation. I think will actually be very useful for our next activity. So as mentioned at the beginning, and as mentioned in the email communications prior to the webinar, we will be using Miro. Miro is a tool that basically will allow us to kind of like gather and using digital post-its to get ideas on how we can have a successful sustainable algae industry sector in 2045. So we'll be doing a backcasting exercise that our facilitators will also introduce to you in the breakout rooms. So the idea is that we will be working backwards and just identify key steps that can take us to what we really want as general goals for 2045. So in a few minutes, Zoom will show you that there will be 4 breakout rooms available. We have 2 microalgae breakout rooms and 2 macroalgae breakout rooms. I know that we might have some spirulina stakeholders in the room. For those, I would actually encourage you to join the microalgae one. Unfortunately, based on the registrations, we saw that we did not really have a numbers for a dedicated one, but we hope that given some of the overlaps that you have with the microalgae industry, I think that you can also find a good house there. And yeah, you will get to be moved there in a few minutes. Also soon, a link will be posted in the chat, which you will be able to use to access the Miro board. So all of you will be able to access the Miro board, and our facilitators at the beginning will also give you a short indication of how to use the board, how to create the post-its, and how to organize your ideas in the all framework. So I hope to see you back in the main room at 11:50 so that we can debrief in all of it. As you can see, the breakout rooms are divided by name. So we invite everybody that has their first name, starting with the letter A to M, to join the first breakout rooms of each biomass, whereas everyone else to join the N to Z and the second kind of instances of the breakout rooms. So I think that we are ready to open the breakout rooms, and we will all see you back in 55 minutes.
At this point, I'm sorry, Silvia, but you can see maybe a window popping up with the breakout rooms, and then you can choose the one. I see some people already joining the rooms. So just to guide the participants, you can choose macro, and also in line with your first name. Let us know if you have any doubts.
I will stop sharing so it might be easier to see the boxes popping up.
Hi, Laura. Where these boxes should pop up? I don't see any pop-ups.
So in the bottom black bar, you should have at the very right side, there should be a box that says breakout rooms. If you click on it, you should be able to open up a box in which there are the list of all of the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I don't have breakout rooms box. Okay, now you go to three dots, more three dots, and then join breakout room. Okay.
Thank you. Nice. And if there's any technical issues, feel free to come back to the main room and ask us for any support. Laura, I think you're on mute.
You can also, if you have difficulties, we can also assign you a room. Just let us know which room you'd like to join. I think Tina is alone in the macro
Yeah.
N to Z.
Yeah, just to clarify, if your first name starts with the letter from N to Z, you can also still scroll down and join the second room for microalgae, because I see that the first one is actually starting to be quite busy. And there is one other one. I see that some people are already starting to move to the other one. That's great. And if you're struggling to be included, you can also mute yourself or raise your hand here and let us know which breakout room perhaps you want to be assigned to.
Hello, yes, I would like to be in macro and in number 1, I think, and I don't know how to move my name to this line or to this room. I'm Cristina.
Can you move, Sophia?
I can, so you would like to be in the first one. Okay, I will assign you now. I might actually assign you to the second one because there's less people and the first one is quite busy, but it's still macroalgae, correct?
Macro, yes, macro.
Excellent. Then
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
We still have some people in the main room. I don't know if you also need some help.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I would also like to be assigned. So I open the mirror and I see like the people doing comments, but I'm not sure. I didn't get the pop-up to shift to another room. So if you could assign me.
which room?
Also macro.
Okay, would you like to be in the first one? I will add you also to the second one. I will add you now.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
Anyone else need a hand for the
I see.
breakouts? There are some people in the chat.
Matilde, just let us know which room, let us know right away which room you want to be assigned and we'll assign you. Macroalgae, I can do it. No.
Elena. Felix.
Yeah, hello. I am also lost. I would like to join to the macro algae.
Yes, I will assign you.
Yeah, thanks.
Of course.
Sorry, Sylvia, could you assign me again? Because I entered and I closed something and I came back. I'm really sorry. If you could assign me again to the macro, please.
Was it macro or micro?
Macro.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. No, thank you.
I see in the chat someone else was asking, Helena, micro, okay.
It's done. I have a sign.
Teresa,
Teresa is macro.
macro, okay.
Anyone else would like to join the breakouts? I don't know, Sylvia, would you like to join? Can we assign you?
Silvio, I tried to assign you to one of the microalgae because I thought that would be the most interesting to you, but I can change you. Yes? Okay. Then is it working? Did you receive a notification? Yes. Okay, perfect. And everyone else, I think you might be working on other things in the background. So as soon as you have some time and you would like us to move you, please feel free to unmute yourselves and then we're happy to do so.
Sylvia, do you want us to move around the rooms or should we stay?
You can stay. I think that a little bit, some of us should stay here just in case somebody new joins and then we can assign them manually.
Sure.
I'm just finishing some last things in the background and then I will start to go around the rooms just to check that everything is working well. Nice. I see that everybody is slowly coming back from the breakout rooms. I hope you had some interesting discussions and, you know, even if you did not get to the end of the activity, that is good because we mainly wanted a big, busy Miro board with a lot of input and it looks like that is what we have. So we're very, very happy. Now I would like for the facilitators from each of the 4 breakout rooms to very, very quickly in 60 seconds kind of report what are maybe some key, if you got to the voting, what were the most popular actions or goals that everybody seemed to identify. And if you did not get to the voting, whether there were some areas that you discussed more at length and others that maybe also had some more debates around it. So I would like to start actually from the last breakout room, perhaps. Tina, would you like to give us a very short input of what was discussed in the microalgae, in the first microalgae breakout room?
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yes, so we had quite a few points, but then again, after looking at it closely, we could also group them a bit better. a big topic was, if we look at today, especially the funding, where immediate action is needed, that yeah, it's quite expensive still in certain areas to yeah, to get the algae applications started. Well, I forgot to mention the breakout room was specifically for microalgae. And also regulatory changes, especially in the wastewater area, that yeah, allow for microalgae biomass from wastewater treatment should be considered for biofertilizers, was one of the points that was voted for a lot as an issue. But also supporting breakthrough innovations was one of the immediate actions, and especially also the scale up to achieve finally the low cost that was the lower costs for the production. So coming also together with the funding again as a point, and also another point that was highlighted was that that it was shown lots of applications already work and are good, but somehow the customer is still not aware of it, or yeah, what is needed to make them aware of the situation, that it works, that it's great. Also connected with the goal 2045 that everyone knows that algae is great, basically. And at the moment, yeah, probably more consumer campaigns are needed. And that was one of the outcomes here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Then I think it might be nice to switch to Isabel, because they were in your room. We were also discussing microalgae. Were there some common themes, or did your discussion took you somewhere completely different?
Well, I think we all agree the funding is a key point here. But we were also discussing about the microalgae in food. I really like a point that one of the participants was mentioning, that there is a lack of recipes in food, for example. So even if you have the microalgae powder, you don't really know what to cook with that. So I think it would be a good idea to start from maybe creating, I don't know, microalgae with cooking recipes and so on. We will also discussing about the more local jobs are needed or will be placed by the 2045. But in general, I think we all agree the general awareness of the benefits of algae is so little. So we need to work on that, either in the private sector, but also getting help with from the governments. Yeah, basically that were our conclusions. We were talking about food, also about fuels. I think the whole microalgae applications needs to, yeah, we need more awareness, not just the population in general, but also in the different sectors. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Isabel. Okay, so awareness then seems to have been a big topic on the micro side. Then switching to the macro side, maybe Ferdinand, you can start. What did your conversation bring up? Did you get to think?
Yeah, interestingly, public awareness and public engagement was also a really big topic on the macroalgae side. So really shared interest there, and I guess opportunities to work across macro and micro. And then secondly, turning Europe into a seaweed pioneer, which means that we need innovation, we need research on new species, we need innovative cultivation methods, and diversity of ecosystems and cultivation methods. And that in turn needs funding and support, especially to help startups and small companies get over this valley of death, for example. And secondly, and also then looking at for 2045 that algae is used in ways that contribute to a healthier planet, that we are not actually going from one damaging agricultural system to a damaging aquacultural system. We're avoiding exploitation. So in order to ensure that this is working, we need cost-benefit analyses, LCAs, etc., and also smart regulation, which is the next point around regulation. We should be ambitious in developing a clear legal policy framework at EU and national level, but we should also include proportionality so that small producers are not disadvantaged by the regulation against the large producers.
Nice.
So
Perfect.
there you go.
Very, very good. And then at the light of speed, Maya, I know that your group was probably, your board was probably one of the most crowded.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main takeaways from your discussion?
I think I could just say that I think in general we agreed with everything that Ferdy was saying as well. I guess one addition is that one of the actions that we should do today, and that is a bit more on kind of the business side, is that businesses should be a little bit more specialized, and this should also be enabled also by other factors, of course. But in order to kind of enable investments, we need to specialize the industry instead of making everybody generalists. We discussed offshore wind farms a lot. It's not possible to summarize in a second, but this was also a very strong topic in the group. And we also, there was also an interesting comment about that we need to get away from kind of the biology focus and focus more on the industry and the applications and the businesses, because that's where we need to be if we want to create a strong market.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you for all of these summaries. So I'm just going to share back the screen again to thank everybody, because we're reaching at the end. So of course, we use this Miro in this session, but we want to emphasize that the Miro board will remain open. And on top of the 3 big boards that you have, if you still have it open, we actually have another corner on the right in which we actually encourage everybody to include, especially those working on projects. We know that a lot of projects are working on a lot of these topics. So please make sure to include if you worked on any reports and if you have any interesting input that you think would be useful for us to work when working on the roadmap. And lastly, operationally, I know that some of you were not there for the first part, so you will be happy to know that we'll be sharing the slides as well as the recording with you in an email next week. And we will also once again kind of like include additional information on how you can also provide us more input that you might have, that you might come up with next week or in the afternoon and over the weekend if you suddenly think about this exciting webinar and forgot to mention something in the breakout room. And lastly, once you close the webinar, because we're at the end, we will actually have a post feedback quiz. So please fill this out because it's going to be very, very helpful for us, especially because as part of the platform, we're running a series of webinars. And the next one actually being in September on data, which I know is a topic that for sure Angela, of course, mentioned at the beginning, but I saw that some of you also mentioned in the Miro board. And so your feedback will be very, very good for us to know how we can create a good format for you that is informative and interesting. So yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today. We did pretty well on timing. We only stole 1 extra minute of your time, but we're very, very grateful for all of your input, and we hope to see you in September at the next webinar.